In a world that boasts freedom and justice for all, the reality on the ground often tells a different story. Many believe that the system works for everyone, but for some, the rules seem to bend or break without consequence. This is the story of one such moment. A moment no one saw coming. A moment that would ripple through the lives of all involved, challenging what they thought they knew about authority, identity, and justice. It began on an ordinary evening in a quiet, unsuspecting neighborhood, nestled between the city's bustle and the calm of suburban edges. The streets were lined with aging maples, their golden leaves carpeting the sidewalks in a crisp symphony of fall. Porch lights flickered on one by one as the sun dipped beneath the skyline, casting long shadows that reached across the pavement. It was the kind of neighborhood where nothing dramatic ever seemed to happen, where the most excitement in a week might be a stray dog wandering too far from home or a block party spilling past 10 p.m. But beneath the peaceful surface there was tension. It wasn't loud or overt, but it was there. It hung in the air like static before a storm. People knew each other, waved politely, but there were unspoken divides, lines you didn't cross, assumptions you didn't question. Walking through this neighborhood that evening was Agent Maya James, a black woman in her late 30s. Maya was the kind of woman who carried herself with calm intensity. She didn't need to wear her badge to command respect. Her presence alone did that. Tall, poised, and dressed in professional yet practical clothes, she had just wrapped up a grueling day working an undercover operation involving political corruption and trafficking. Her mind buzzed with the details of the case, with names and timelines swirling like puzzle pieces waiting to be placed. As she turned the corner onto a quieter street, her focus shifted slightly. Her phone buzzed with a secure message from her team. She stopped briefly, checking it with practiced discretion, then continued walking, her senses still heightened. Years of fieldwork had taught her never to fully let her guard down, even in places that appeared safe. That's when she noticed the police cruiser. Parked slightly off to the side, engine idling, the vehicle seemed unremarkable at first. But as she passed by, she felt something, a shift in the atmosphere, a flicker of instinct that made her spine stiffen. From the driver's side, a figure emerged. The officer who stepped out was white, mid-40s, stocky build with a face lined by years of experience and perhaps cynicism. His name, she would later learn, was Officer Darren Colby. He wore the uniform like armor, every inch of him taut with authority. But his eyes held something else. Not curiosity, not suspicion, something darker, something personal. He called out not with standard procedure, but with a tone that bristled with hostility masked as command. Maya paused, confused. She hadn't broken any law. She wasn't loitering, she wasn't even jaywalking. She had simply walked past a parked vehicle, and yet this officer had taken a sudden interest in her. "Hey you," he barked. "What are you doing here?" Maya turned slowly, her posture composed but firm. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. I asked what you're doing in this neighborhood." Maya's brow furrowed slightly. She had grown up hearing stories like this, friends, family, even strangers. But she hadn't expected it to happen to her. Not here, not now, and certainly not after all she had accomplished. She took a breath. "I'm walking home," she replied evenly, maintaining eye contact. "Is there a problem, officer?" For a split second, Colby seemed taken aback by her composure. But then, something in his demeanor shifted. His hand moved toward his belt, gripping the baton at his side. The gesture was subtle but unmistakable. A warning, a threat. Not protocol. "I need to see some ID," he said. "Why?" "You're acting suspicious." "Suspicious? For walking on a public sidewalk in business attire?" "I'm a federal agent," Maya responded, reaching calmly into her inner jacket pocket. "I can show you my credentials." But before she could retrieve her badge, he took a step forward, then another, his movements aggressive. In an instant that would later be replayed over and over in courtrooms and news reports, Officer Colby lifted his foot and kicked Maya squarely in the stomach. It was swift, brutal, and completely unprovoked. The impact sent her staggering back. The wind knocked from her lungs. She fell to one knee, stunned, not just from the physical blow, but from the sheer disbelief of what had just occurred. The pain radiated through her abdomen, but it was nothing compared to the emotional shock. It wasn't just an assault, it was a statement. And yet, in that moment of pain and disbelief, Maya's training kicked in. She looked up, her expression shifting from shock to clarity. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about everyone who had ever been silenced, dismissed, or brutalized under the guise of authority. And in that split second, she made a decision. Not out of anger, but out of justice. As Officer Colby moved in, perhaps expecting her to cower, Maya sprang to her feet. Her movement was fluid and precise, her body remembering every hour of tactical training, every lesson drilled into her since Quantico. Her leg shot forward in a powerful arc, a clean, controlled kick that sent him stumbling backward. He landed on the pavement with a thud, momentarily dazed. The street, once quiet, now held its breath. Doors opened. Curtains shifted. Neighbors peeked out. Some started recording. Others just stared. In the midst of it all, Maya stood tall, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of controlled adrenaline. She didn't gloat. She didn't run. She pulled out her badge and calmly held it high. FBI, you just assaulted a federal agent. Everything changed in that moment. For Colby, for the neighborhood, and for Maya, who realized that her quiet walk home had just become the beginning of something much bigger. Would you like to continue with Section 2? I can develop the aftermath, legal consequences, public reaction, or media frenzy, whatever direction you want to explore. Time, for that moment, felt like it had paused, stretched out in the space between action and consequence. The street was silent except for the low hum of the police cruiser's engine, the soft rustle of autumn leaves, and the quickened breath of those who had witnessed the incident. From behind curtains and porch railings, a few neighbors peered out in stunned silence, their faces lit by the soft glow of smartphones already recording. Agent Maya James stood tall, unwavering, her eyes locked on the man who had just assaulted her. The sting in her abdomen was real, but she pushed it aside. She had felt worse in the field. This wasn't the first time she'd faced danger, but it was the first time it came from someone who was supposed to protect her, not hurt her. The attack hadn't been just physical, it had been symbolic, a challenge, an insult, a test, and she was more than ready to respond. As the officer reached for his baton again, she stepped forward, her movements fluid and decisive. With a swift motion, she closed the distance between them, parrying his arm with one hand and grabbing his wrist with the other. Before he could react, she twisted his arm behind his back with clinical precision. The move was defensive, not excessive, a controlled tactic taught in every federal training program. But what made it powerful was how effortless it looked in her hands. Colby grunted in pain, trying to yank his arm free, but Maya held firm. Her grip was unshakable. He attempted to twist, to swing his elbow, to knock her off balance, but she matched his movements with calculated restraint. Her face remained focused, eyes sharp, every breath measured. She wasn't fighting out of rage, she wasn't flailing. She was commanding the situation with complete control. "Stop resisting," she said clearly, her voice calm and professional. "You're under detainment by a federal agent." The words hung heavy in the air, unmistakable in their authority. The officer froze, stunned by her strength and her command. He had expected fear, submission, compliance. What he got instead was a force of justice, embodied in the very person he had underestimated. And now, pinned and powerless, he felt the weight of his mistake. Maya reached into her blazer and revealed her badge, letting it hang in full view for the crowd beginning to gather. People were emerging now, some timidly, others emboldened by what they had witnessed. Phones were raised, questions buzzed. "Is she a cop?" "No," she said, "FBI." "Did he hit her first?" "She didn't start it. I saw it." She handled him like it was nothing. As murmurs spread, Maya stayed focused. She wasn't here for theatrics. She wasn't looking for applause. She was doing what she had been trained to do: protect herself, preserve evidence, and maintain order. She guided Officer Colby to the ground, keeping his arm firmly locked. Reaching for her phone, she called her bureau contact directly. "This is Special Agent Maya James. I've been assaulted by a uniformed officer while off duty. I've detained him. I need immediate federal response at my location. Code 14. Repeat. Code 14. Her voice was steady. No panic, no fear. The officer, still on the ground, protested weakly. "You're making a mistake." "No," Maya replied coldly. "You did." It wasn't just a response to him. It was a message to every system that had ever looked away. She hadn't just stood up for herself. She had stood up for every person who had suffered in silence, every victim who never got the chance to defend themselves, and every name reduced to a hashtag. And she had done it not with vengeance but with dignity. The officer's initial confidence quickly turned into panic. He had never expected a black woman, especially one so composed, to respond with such strength. His eyes widened as he realized he had underestimated her. His stance faltered, and, for a brief moment, he froze. The power dynamic had shifted in an instant. The officer's experience with authority had led him to believe that his uniform and badge made him invincible. But here he was, on the ground, struggling against someone he thought he could intimidate. The shock on his face was evident as he struggled to regain control. He never expected that his racist assumptions would lead him into such a situation. The officer, realizing his mistake, tried to regain his composure, but it was too late. The black woman, standing tall, was not someone who would be easily subdued. She didn't just fight back for herself. She fought for the countless others who had been silenced, ignored, or hurt by those in power. As the struggle between the officer and the FBI agent unfolded, onlookers began to gather. The atmosphere grew tense as people realized what was happening. They witnessed the unexpected turn of events, a story that no one could have predicted. It wasn't just a physical fight, it was symbolic of a much larger battle. The crowd watched, some in shock, others in disbelief, but many felt a sense of hope. This moment of defiance was a statement that no one should ever be subjected to injustice, especially based on the color of their skin. The officer had clearly underestimated the black woman in front of him, and now he was paying the price. Despite the growing crowd, the officer couldn't regain his footing. He was too focused on trying to break free from the agent's grip. As the minutes passed, it became clear that he was no longer in control. The power he thought he held had vanished, leaving him vulnerable in the face of someone he had wrongly attacked. Eventually, other officers arrived at the scene, breaking up the struggle and restraining the officer who had initiated the attack. But the black woman, now free from the chaos, stood tall, her eyes never leaving the officer. She wasn't just proud of herself for defending her own rights, but for standing up against systemic injustice. This wasn't just an individual fight. It was a statement to the world about the power of resistance, resilience, and justice. The officer, now in handcuffs, was escorted away by his fellow officers. But as he was taken into custody, he couldn't escape the weight of his actions. This moment would be a lesson that he would never forget. The black woman, an FBI agent, had shown him that power is not something that can be taken. It is something that must be earned. And it is something that can be challenged when misused. The story of this encounter spread quickly, inspiring many who had faced similar prejudices. It was a reminder that, no matter the odds, the fight for justice and equality will never be silenced. And in this particular case, it was a reminder that sometimes the ones you least expect are the ones who fight back the hardest.